All right, everyone, welcome to Rich Dad Stockcast with Rich Dad expert, wealth expert, Andy Tanner. And before we get in too deep, a lot of you have a lot of comments in there. A lot of you are talking about how much you have love for Andy. And I just want to remind you, hit subscribe, hit the notifications, because the more people that start to watch this show, the more Andy you get out to the world. So for the love of Andy, hit subscribe.
Oh my gosh,
also leave comments. You know, that always helps YouTube as well. But Andy,
I get embarrassed.
No, people love you. Read the comments, and I know you do.
I love them.
Yep.
Well,
that's kind of why
wonderful
you told me that.
Yep.
And speaking of the wonderful audience and the wonderful Andy Tanner, you have another gift for us, and this one I think you've never given us before. It is the Power of Six course. Am I getting this right?
Yeah. It's a webinar, is what it is, and it's a longer form webinar. I'll tell you what this is about. How this came about a year ago. I had a huge event where I don't do live events. This is the first and maybe the last one I've ever done. But a lot of our students wanted to congregate. They wanted to get together. So I said, let's pick somewhere in the middle of the country. We had people from Australia and Canada and Europe, all over, coming in, South America, and we all came into Houston. And so I emailed everyone that was coming. I says, "What do you want to learn?" They said, "We want to learn how to build a plan and a blueprint to retire, get out of the rat race." And they said, "Andy, what do you do? What in your family, like, what's your process?" And there's 5 or 6 things I look at, right? And that's why we call it the Power Six. And what this really does is, if you really don't know, like if you don't have a clear path and you have this dream, you start like the cash flow game. You have this dream life you want to have, whatever that dream is, one of those things you want to do or buy, and you have that dream, but you don't know how to get from where you are now to get that, and you don't have a roadmap of what to do. That's what this does. This helps people establish a roadmap that is clear. It's not ambiguous where I say, well, I know my dream and I got to kind of buy some assets. No, it makes it quantifiable, puts numbers to things, puts times to things, and it helps people build a roadmap. So it is powerful. And there's 5 or 6 things we look at. So we call it the Power Six. And I think you're going to love the webinar. It's so common sense. It's so simple. It takes discipline. It takes temperament. It takes education. But if you have the roadmap and you apply those 3 things, education, discipline, and temperament, you can achieve anything you want to achieve. So it's really, you can tell I'm pretty energized about it. I'm pretty excited about it. We actually did the exercise in Houston at the event. Everyone got it. I have a calculators that we use, and everyone got out there on their phone. And everyone in the room, like, we literally built everyone a plan in that room. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this. What was crazy is we had letters within 6 months of people saying, I hit my goal, which I did not expect that. Not everyone hit it in 6 months. Not everyone did. But we had people within 6 months that got there. I was like, holy cow. So really excited about this one, and I hope people enjoy it. It's a fun webinar, so you'll enjoy that one. Webinar, seminar on the web class, whatever you want to call it.
I don't want to take the whole episode to talk about this, but just real fast, as just a quick question. Is your plan, your Power Six, is it personalized, or is it one plan fits all?
No, it's personalized, and that's a great question. Boy, you couldn't have thrown that softball over the plate any better. The whole purpose of it is one size doesn't fit all, and I'll tell you why. Well, if it starts with a dream, everyone's dreams are different, and some people are more content. Other people dream big. It depends on what you want. For example, a lot of people want to travel. I have to travel a little in retirement because my wife likes it. She wants places to go. Me, man, if I never saw an airplane the rest of my life, it wouldn't be too soon. I can't stand those tiny, even first class seats for me are too tiny, and the beds are tiny, and the hotels. I got a big bedroom and a big tub and a big shower, and you go to a hotel suite and it's not as big.
Yeah,
big guy.
For those on the podcast not watching this right now, Andy's, what are you, 6'7"?
I'm
That
6'8". Yeah, I'm
6'8".
6'8". My son's got an inch on me now. But back to the Power Six in your question, everyone's dreams are different, and everyone's going to have different price tags on their goals, and everyone's going to have a little different pathway to get those. So there are many roads to heaven. This is not a boilerplate template world. You want to be unique because you are unique.
Gotcha. All right, we should probably get onto the show. Sorry to derail you there.
Sorry.
But
I got
fun.
excited about Power Six. It's pretty cool.
You should.
It's
I mean,
really
it's
cool.
nice to see a passionate teacher that really cares.
The feedback we've had on this particular exercise is so simple, but people are like, oh my gosh, this will change me. This will change what I do. So it's fun.
All right, well, let's get to the show, shall we?
Yeah, let's hop in. Let's get going.
All right. Occasionally you'll mention Treasury bonds. We've never done a show on Treasury bonds, and we've never done it certainly in any kind of detail on how it affects stock investing.
Yeah.
But an article just came out, and so I did want to see how we could take day-to-day knowledge that we find on the internet, that we find on reputable investment sites or financial sites, and really just see how you kind of interpret these things. So for this week, the name of the article is Treasury Yields Are Steady as Traders, I should learn how to speak, as traders assess government borrowing plan and the Fed meeting. So we're kind of talking about Treasury here. We're talking about the Fed, and we're talking about how traders assess this, but I am pretty sure you're going to also mention how investors assess this. So
yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to go over there. Where do you want to start? Treasury bonds, the Fed, what the Fed's doing?
I think I'd like to set context first on this, because let's leave the whole thing for a minute. Let's talk about something else.
Go for it.
When my kids, I was a pretty finicky eater. You can tell that changed. My kids were kind of finicky just by nature. And it's so funny because I remember there was a time where my younger son, he wouldn't eat a hamburger, wouldn't touch it. I mean, you couldn't, I don't know how we raised him. I don't know what he ate, to tell you the truth, but he wouldn't eat a hamburger, wouldn't eat bread. He wouldn't eat bread. And then one day, I think we were at an Italian restaurant. They brought out a breadstick and he tried it. And now he's an addict like his dad. I'm not a drinker, but I've been told that the first time anyone tries a glass of wine, it's pretty much like cough medicine.
Yeah,
but they acquire but then they become a connoisseur of it, and they can taste textures, and it's a beautiful experience from what I've been told. So when you get into financial education, there's things that are kind of hard on the palate when you're a newbie, and they say, well, that tastes bland. Usually it's a bland taste, and they don't see the richness of it at all. Right. So I have a fight with everyone in the world about the Fed because, people taste that little sip of wine, let's say. Now complicated, boring, blah, blah, blah. When you understand the impact of how monetary policy affects your wealth, it's like candy. And if you look at guys like Robert Kiyosaki and you subscribe to the Rich Dad radio show, he will talk about the Fed over monetary policy, debt, grunchy giants over and over and over because it's delicious to people that get it. So I would start with that context that if we say, we're going to talk about the Feds, oh boy, Feds news, policy, right. Treasury bonds. When you understand it and it clicks with you, you're like, oh my gosh, this is how to become a millionaire, This is how it's done. You understand this, you got the big picture. A huge part of the battle is won. So I try my best to sell people on that. Like I tried to sell bread and burgers to my son. I don't know if I'd sell wine to him. I don't know. But
maybe later.
But does that make sense? And
yeah,
so
it really does.
So I would start with that. So when we say, well, let's talk about Treasury bonds, and people say, Treasury bonds, it's everything. Treasury bonds are everything in the world. They set the floor on interest rates. They set the tone for the whole globe of what you can do, because a Treasury bond, in theory, is the United States can print money. Like Alan Greenspan said, we can print money and pay whatever debt we have, So if we borrow money, we can pay that debt with a printing press. Everything it relies on, everything is based on that. And so when you have a floor on interest rates and you control that, everyone in the world has to decide that, okay, I can give money to the United States, right? I can buy a treasury bond. I can loan money to the United States. Absolutely, they'll pay it back because they can print money to do it. Or I can loan it to a corporation that could go bankrupt. Or I could loan it to a guy in a mortgage who could lose his job and have the house foreclosed on. Or I could loan it on a guy that's run up his credit cards and can't pay him anymore and goes bankrupt and defaults. The idea that the world thinks that the United States wouldn't default gives that a theoretical risk-free attitude towards it. So when the Fed tweaks stuff, everything it pays attention to that, and you want to know about it. So all a treasury, all a treasury is, there's T notes, T bills, T bonds, depending on the length of time, 10-year, 5-year, 30-year, whatever. But they're basically called treasury bonds. They're called treasury notes, treasury bills. And they make the world go round, man. So yeah, it's a big deal.
It's one of the advantages over here at the Richet offices. We meet with Robert once a week, and man, he drills into the Fed and the Treasury every time for the same reasons. It's if you can understand that, you have a much better chance of understanding money, currency, and really how to use it to buy assets. So
yeah, and how you make your decisions and positions up. Let me say why this is so important for real estate investors. I don't think, like, my mind thinks about real estate probably a little differently than most. I don't know how Robert thinks about it, but I bet he thinks about it a little bit this way, just, having listened to him. Is real estate is kind of about houses and kind of about land. It's kind of about that. But what real estate is really about is a short position on the US dollar. It's about debt. It's about debt. In other words, I'm borrowing something that's valuable today for 30 years, and then I'm paying it back when it's not as valuable. So think about that. If I sell something that's valuable high and I buy it back low, I literally bought low and sold high in the reverse order. That's a short. So, in the stock market, we say borrow a stock, exchange it for money, exchange it back to a stock, return the stock. 4 steps. If you look at the 4 boxes in a financial statement of income, expenses, asset, and liabilities, it's the same 4 steps. Borrow money in the liability column, turn it into a house in the asset column, turn it back into cash through rent, and then return it through the expense column. So it goes liability, asset, income, expense, and you keep the fat that's in the middle between that. And so when you look at a person with a job, they have money enter from a job into the income column. A wealthy person has money enter in through the liability column because borrowing is easier than working. And so when you understand that borrowing is easier than working, you want to know about how the Fed works and how debt and borrowing works. Because the Fed, if they have to pay off everything, if the Fed has to buy the bonds that the United States sells like they're going out of style, they're going to have to print money to do that. That makes the value of a currency go down. And I would just give a plug for real estate, if I may. I mean, it's so weird how people get dogmatic about business, real estate, stock, which is better. It's all good, and it all benefits from inflation. All of it does. Stocks are a bet on inflation, right? They're just a bet. Dividends are a bet on inflation. But the best one, really, real estate, to borrow and bet on inflation is fantastic. The best asset you have really is your debt. If the dollar disintegrates, because your debt disappears. So I would just say, understanding the Fed and understanding interest rates and understanding reverse repo markets and understanding, fractional reserve lending and reserve requirements and all these little levers that the Fed can pull, it's huge and it's fun and it's exciting. Let me sell this to the real estate people. If you ask me where Apple's going to go, okay, Andy, where's Apple going to go tomorrow? I can't, no idea. Ask me where gold's going to go tomorrow. No idea. Oil, no idea. But there is one bet that I'd throw all my money on the table on, and that's this. Andy, in a 30-year period, do you think the US dollar will be worth less? I said that too fast together. Worth less. You think the US dollar will be worth pause less or worth less in 30 years? And I would take that bet every single time with as close to 100% confidence as I could possibly come on any other prediction. You know, we did a show on, is the market going up at the end of the year? Not. I don't know. And, you know, really, I think that episode let people know I really don't care. But I will bet on a falling dollar time and time again. So, yeah, I don't have the same amount of real estate like Kenny and Robert do, but I'll tell you, I'm never going to turn down the opportunity to borrow money and short that dollar in a real estate deal when I get the opportunity. I'm never going to turn that down because
Yeah,
I'm
right.
more confident in that direction, that dollar going down. You know, all the other stuff, you know, gold, silver, oil, you know, up, down, up, down, up, down, technical analysis. Dollar, long term, down. Done. Mic drop. Boom.
Robert says the same thing. He
Down.
said, if the government
Down.
destroys the dollar, then when they pay back all the debt they've acquired, they're paying pennies instead of dollars. So
Yeah, I mean, you go to Zimbabwe. Let's go to some extreme, nutty, you know, tinfoil hat example. You know, you got Zimbabwe. What if you borrowed $100 trillion and bought all the real estate you could, and then 2 years later, those $100 trillion notes are rolling in the street. So you pick one up out of the garbage can, hand it to the bank, say, "Here," you know, and now your debt's gone. And the bank could say, "Actually, it's not worth anything. We don't even want it." You know, your debt is erased. Why do they want something that's worthless? There's nothing in the liability column anymore. Anything that was there, poof, it's gone. The value's gone. So shorting the dollar, uh, Warren Buffett, stock guy, bigger stock guy than me or anyone else. He once said that. He said, he said the problem with him is managing them, but he said there's a YouTube video. If I could pick up, in his little voice, if I could pick up 2 or 300,000, single family homes, at these rates, I'd do it, and in effect, it's a great way to short the dollar. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So it's about debt and the dollar going down, less about, square footage and, what color tiles you're trying to get in there to flip the house with or whatever you're doing, right?
okay, all right, let's take this back to stocks. So because about, I don't know, 2 minutes ago before this mini rant that you did, and thank you for not yelling at me.
I didn't yell at you.
Yeah. I take it personally. You gave it real quick, just real fast. You gave 4 steps to wealth. And at the very first one, you said, borrow a stock. How does somebody borrow a stock? How do you do that?
That's the same way you borrow money. You click a button. It's not tough. We could do it. We could do a show on that sometime. It's probably worth its own show.
Well, how do you do that?
You've heard of
Margin accounts?
It's nice to have a margin account. Do that. You need a margin account. But okay, think of it this way. This is a little bit of a digression, but we're free to do that.
That's what we do.
When you put money in the bank, what do they do with it?
Loan it out to somebody else.
So people borrow the money, right? Okay.
Yep.
And what do the people do with the money? They sell the money for a house. They trade it. They trade it away for something else. So they borrow the cash and trade it for something. So that's fine. All right. So what do people do when they put stock in a brokerage? What does the brokerage do with that? Well, they loan it out. So it's that simple. It's no different than borrowing money from a bank. You have people that hold money in the bank and the bank loans the money out. You have people that hold stocks in a brokerage and the brokerage loans the stocks out. That's a good analogy. That's pretty close. It's close enough for what we're talking about. And it's awesome. The reason they call it short, interestingly enough, is short comes from the idea of how long you would hold that position. So, for example, if I buy something and own it, then I want to hold that for long term. I don't want that asset leaving. But if I borrow money, I don't want to be borrowed forever. That needs to be a shorter term play. So we're thinking there'll be a shorter term move. You don't want to be short for a long time because the market generally goes up over time. So that's where the word short comes from. Actually, taking a short position has to do with an implied time frame that is shorter than a long time frame. So you're long in things you want to be in for a long time, short And it just so happens that long things, you want them to go up, and short things, you want them to go down. That's how that works. We could do a show on that.
We should, because honestly, I get the context of it, but I want to ask you a content question because I am a little confused on the how. Are you saying I could go to my stockbroker and I could
Today,
I want to be clear about this. I can say, stockbroker, I want to borrow 100 Tesla stocks. And the stockbroker is going to go, here's 100 Tesla stocks. I have to be missing something.
In fact, it's actually easier than that, because not only is he going to loan it to you, he's going to sell it to someone else once he loans it to you. It's one step, one click. So you'll actually borrow that 100 shares of Tesla, sell that 100 shares of Tesla to someone else, and you'll have that money sitting in your lap.
Am I borrowing the money to buy the Tesla to sell, or
no, you're borrowing the Tesla? Well, let's just do it. God, we're past time anyway. You've got a meeting we're missing, so who cares?
Let's go for it.
Okay, look, I borrow a ABC stock at $100, right? I borrow 100 shares of ABC stock. It's $100. And when I click it, I borrow the stock and I sell it on the market. So what do I owe the brokerage? 100 shares of stock. You clear on that?
Yep.
And let's say it's $100 a share, so I got $10,000 in my lap. So you click that button, they loan you 100 shares of stock, $100 a share. They sell that stock to someone on the market, and you got $10,000 sitting in your lap. You clear on that?
Yep.
Yes? You got that one?
Got it.
Okay. Stock falls to $50. Okay, how much money do you have in your lap? 10 grand, right?
Yep.
What do you owe the brokerage? 100 shares.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got 10 grand in your lap. You owe the brokerage 100 shares. True?
Yes.
Okay, but what's the share price now?
$50.
Okay, so how much are your 10,000 you going to take to buy 50 or buy 100 shares with now? Half of it, right?
Yeah, 5,000.
Okay, now you buy the stock back. So now you got $5,000 in one hand, 100 shares in the other, right? What do you owe the brokerage?
5,000.
No, you owe them 100 shares.
Yeah, 100 shares, right?
All right. So you take that 100 shares, you say, here's your 100 shares back. What are you left with?
5,000.
How much you start with?
0. Well, I guess
you got?
No, 0. I got 5,000.
There you go. There you go. So that's shorting. And you would want to do that in a short amount of time. Does that make sense? Crazy, right?
It does.
What's crazy? Yeah, but wrap your head around this. What did you buy the stock at?
Well, you borrowed it at.
No, what did you buy the stock at?
Oh, when I bought it on phase 2, right? $50.
Yeah. You bought it 50. What'd you sell the stock at?
100.
So you bought at 50. You sold at, and
100.
you made. So you bought low, sold high, made 5 grand. The only difference is you did the selling first and the buying second. So since you did the selling first and the buying second, you sold high and bought low. That's the same as buying low and selling high. You're still selling at the same price. You're still buying at the same price, right?
Right.
The only difference is you're doing it in the reverse order because the stock is going in the reverse direction. Not that tough.
So that's how you make money using debt in the stock market.
You could say that. I am borrowing stock. Yeah, you could say that. I'm borrowing stock. You could absolutely say that because I am in debt. And you're doing the same thing in real estate. You're borrowing money, trading it for a house, trade it back into money for rent, pay back with the dollar. Same thing, same 4 steps, right? Borrow, exchange back, return. That's it. Those 4 steps. Boom, boom, boom.
So it's the only kicker in this whole thing that when you're doing the borrowing, you're borrowing it for 30 days, whereas when you're doing the real estate, it's a longer term.
No, you can be short for 20 years. You could be. The kicker is this. Here's the kicker. If you buy $10,000 worth of stock, your risk is $10,000 because it could go down and go bankrupt.
Right.
Okay, what if you borrowed that same 100 shares at 10 grand and that company ABC finds the cure for Alzheimer's tomorrow? And now the stock is $20,000 a share, or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. How high can the stock go?
Infinite.
So when you are long, you have a fixed risk. When you're short, you have an infinite risk. So being short is infinitely more risky than being long. So
And
put that in your
especially
pipe and smoke it.
you started with, you would bet all of your money that the Fed is going to go up in 30 years. So this is the same thing when you go long. You could, in theory, bet all of your money.
Let's come full circle on this.
Go up. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I'm gonna come full circle on this. This is really important. Why do we care about the Fed if we're real estate and stock investors? Why should we learn it? Why should we learn to be a connoisseur of this beautiful knowledge that's available to us, this insight that most people don't pay attention to? Why do we want to be illuminated when everyone else is in the dark? I'll tell you why. The opposite of inflation is deflation. So if you're to have a depression, like in the 30s, you're going to get absolutely annihilated because the dollar gets more valuable. Think about the depression. Everyone's out of work. No one has a paycheck. Asset prices start to fall, right? Money's hard to get. Rents start to fall. Money's hard to get. Money's scarce. Money's valuable. Everyone's saving money. That's why the baby boomers' parents, like my parents are baby boomers, my grandparents, they were savers. They were savers because money got more valuable. So you'd want to save it. You'd want to go long and you'd want to stay out of debt. So what kills you is if you don't understand the Fed, you've got to know whether they're poised for inflation or they're poised for deflation. I will tell you right now, everyone, even Volcker, but especially Greenspan, Bernanke, Yellen, Powell, every one of those Fed guys, they're like, we're not doing 1929 again. We're not doing depression again. We're not going to let America have 30% unemployment. We're not going to have this 50-year from the 30s to the 50s of crap. We're going to pump money in to fight this deflationary pressure. There's a lot of deflationary pressure. Globalization is deflationary. If China will work for less, that makes products cheaper. It's deflationary. Technology, better batteries, better capabilities. This is $1,000 today, would have been 50 grand in 1985 if you could even do the stuff this does. And so technology is pushing prices down. Globalization pushes prices down. What does the Fed have to do? They got to figure a way to prop these prices up. How do they do that? They print and they print and they print. Well, now they're in a fix because they're borrowing so much on the fiscal side. They're promising so much in healthcare. They're promising so much in what we call income stability. Income stability is veterans benefits, government pensions. It's healthcare, it's Social Security, it's welfare. All of those things for income stability, the promises we've made, hundreds of trillions of dollars. We're going to print that money. We have to print that money because we're not going to go into depression. So when you understand that and you start to understand that it's not about this podcast alone, it's about listening to Robert, reading his books, going to Robert's radio show and really diving in. I have a class that I always wanted to give away for free. I'll tell you what, let's see. We'll see the comments. If you would like a free class, I won't put it in the show notes. I've already given a good gift today. True? Given a good gift.
In fact, I'm going to rewatch this to make sure I've gleaned all the information.
But I'll tell you what, we'll look at the comments because everyone tells me no one's interested in the Fed. They say, Andy, it's boring. It's a class no one wants. I have a 5-hour course that goes through the major 6 levers that the Fed pulls. I make it simple. People say, well, reverse repo market. I make that stuff simple. I make that stuff interesting. I make that stuff valuable. So we'll look at the comments. You want my free class? Comment, ask for it, and we'll see. We'll see. And if everyone is right, they say, Andy, learning about the Fed is useless knowledge. I can't even imagine someone being that ignorant. Oh, I don't need to know about the Fed or bonds or monetary policy or any of these levers or inflation or printing or fractional reserve lending or I don't need to know all that. Okay, then don't know about it. But I'll be interested. Let's see if people comment. And if they ask for it, maybe we'll give it to them. Maybe we won't.
All right. That sounds good. So everybody comment yay or nay. And Andy, I'm serious. I'm going to, once this gets published, I'm going to watch this a couple times because, you threw so much out there, and
Yeah, we went too small.
no.
Robert would kill us. He'd say, quit going small is what he'd say.
Robert also says repetition is the best way to learn. So
very true. Let's watch
I really
again.
think that's something that applies to this. Yep.
Hey, watch Robert will teach you great stuff on this. I would not know. I got to thank Robert for this. And Maloney too. I think Maloney helped us on this years and years, 1,000 years ago. Would have not have become interested ever in my life in money and monetary policy and currency and inflation without Robert. He is the one that just when I caught it, I was like, oh, wow, this is it. This is grunch. This is it. And if you glean onto that, you can really make decisions that position yourself well.
Yeah. Well, Andy, thank you so much.
Cheers.
That went a different direction, but I feel like we got
way different. But hey, we're allowed. It's America. We have free speech. We can say whatever we want.
There you go.
Let the market decide if they like it or not. All right.
Everybody, put it in the comments, and we'll see you next week. And maybe Andy will offer you a free course. We'll find out.
It's boring. Probably not. It's too boring. Too boring.
I'll see you next week, Andy. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.